Guyana, me Guyana, land of many waters with 6 races living together.
Globuspan is a Guyanese dialogue moving towards the realization of one nation in one Guyana. It's a platform that offers an all-inclusive discussion, with the pros, the cons, the ones that is taken aside, and the ones that stand in the middle. Globuspan believes agreeing and disagreeing are part of the nation's building. Globuspan believes that every Guyanese voice is part of the nation's building. As we span the globe for voices from the diasporas and those living home, we stand on our commitment that we are all Guyanese working towards one nation in one Guyana.
Coffee and Dr. Jagan, Bobby, she gave us our great sons. Rohan Kanhai, Coffee and Dr. Jagan.
As the world turns on its axis bringing changes, we as Guyanese must adopt to those changes for a better Guyana for all. Globuspan stands on its axis with its belief that one nation, one Guyana, one destiny must include voices from all corners of Guyana.
Me Guyana, land of many waters with 6 races living together.
Tonight, we welcome all our listeners to Globuspan Television from far and wide, in Guyana, in the Caribbean, and all throughout the world. This program has been made available by Noir Singh and by Mr. Ryan Gobin and Mr. Devin Bissoon. And also, we'd like to thank our sponsors, both at home and abroad, who have been supporting this program over the years. Tonight we can be heard on Facebook and on YouTube as well. So please tune in by punching in Globuspan Television 24/7, and you can tune in to us on YouTube or Facebook. Our viewers, let me just say this as a caution. The views expressed by our viewers here tonight are those solely of theirs and not necessarily those of the staff and management of Globuspan Television. So tonight we welcome our guest, Mr. Kian Jabour. Mr. Jabour, welcome. You're on mute.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yes, welcome to the program, Mr. Jabour.
Thank you for having me.
And Ms. King, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me. Good evening to everybody.
Ms. King is a graduate from the American University of Peace Studies and also a translator. And Mr. Jabour is a restaurateur and also the chairman for a new and united Guyana party. Lady and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to have you here tonight, and I hope that we'll have a very good program. But first, before we get started, I want to ask you, Mr. Jabour, to give us a brief background of yourself, just for our listeners to be acquainted with you.
Yeah, of course. I am Canadian born, but I've been living in Guyana my entire life. I studied engineering in Toronto, and then I moved down to Guyana, in which I opened a business maybe about 15 years ago. And ever since I've been here, and more or less as I've been here, in my adulthood years, I had a daughter, and I quickly realized that I have to do my part as a young Guyanese to get involved with our political landscape. Guyana is a very small country, and the decisions that are made politically have a very, very strong effect. I think a bit more of a direct effect on our lives. So I realized a long time ago that if you want to make sure that we're building a life for our kids and participate in the building of Guyana, then it has to be done through a political method. And that's why I decided to join a new and united Guyana and help the party to get started. And ever since, I think 2018 is when I got involved. Ever since I've been here and trying to do my part, participated in the 2020 elections and that entire saga. And now moving forward to 2025, I'm going to continue the journey for ANUG and people like Althea hopefully we'll be in Parliament soon for us as the ANUG. Got acquired a seat, earned a seat in the 2020 election. So we have a lot to get done, and I hope to contribute more to Guyana than I have moving forward. And I look forward to working with everyone along the political landscape from here on out.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Ms. King?
Okay, so I'm currently pursuing general psychology at American University of Peace Study. I had concluded the associate's degree and currently concluding the bachelor's degree. I hope that this area that I'm studying, I can make a great impact in our mental health here in Guyana. I won't say I have a huge passion in politics. I do not come from a family of politics, but what I have a huge passion in is making a positive impact in my society. So I became part of ANUG through doing humanitarian services, actually through the youth organization. And since then, I have quickly feel the passion for doing more for my country, doing more activist work, I would say, on behalf of the party. That was really going to be my focal area and my real goal and objective. However, I am still going to be part, if given the opportunity, to represent a new united Guyana there in Parliament. So as a youth, I really have the passion of making that positive impact and contribution in my society to the best of my ability. I think there is a lot to learn in this journey, as well, as I'm a person who does not have a political background, but have more of an honest, pure, and innocent mindset as a youth, ready to take on the challenges, and I would say also the role of what a role of a youth may play in our politics. So that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Our topic tonight is politics, ethnic voting, and the role of third parties in Guyana's entrenched two-party system. But before I get to that topic, there's something our viewers or listeners ask me to always mention, and that is cost of living. Ms. King, how cost of living is affecting the youths in Guyana and also the elderly?
Right. So the cost of living is something we say that it is way above the percentage of what we receive, based on our expenditure, right? In every aspect, in terms of our schooling, our education, our health, our transportation, reaching from one place to the other, our sustainability here, right? This is what I would say revolves more around cost of living. For youths, I find it very difficult. For a person who is studying, you have to finance your education, and you have to finance other stuff and other necessities, I should say, other basic necessities. And at the same time, there are some persons who have to live home with their parents, like myself, to be able to properly afford certain privileges when it comes to your education, when it comes to your general lifestyle. I think anybody who is earning anything below $50,000, and the pensioners, which their wage is below that rate, I do find it very challenging to be able to sustain yourself, knowing that there's increase in food, in your consumables. Just going to the market, everything seems to increase by 500. Apparently, every other month there is an increase in consumable milk and rice, for example. These simple factors, it might seem little if you if you single them out, but it is everything combined together. Everything combining together. Your electricity, your water, your internet, your phone. It's like you have to cut down on so much if you want to maintain a certain thing. And this is what I realized that we have been doing just to cope with the high rise of cost of living is basically cutting back. There are many sacrifices that are being made in all sectors, not just for the youth and just for the elderly. For every sector, there is cutbacks and sacrifices that are being made just for us to cope with the high cost of living.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Jabur, what do you think should be done to reduce cost of living in Guyana, in your view?
I think cost of living, a reduction in cost of living is a little tricky at the moment. Let me tell you, let me explain. If you have to look around the world, you know that, so the supply chain has been affected across the world, whether it be shipping, whether it be because of wars around the world, whether it be climate change. We know that, the world is just not producing the same it has been. And because of this, reducing the cost of living always gets a little tricky because there's a lot of goods that you really can't affect the cost of. But what I think can be done in Guyana is to boost the earning capacity of the citizens, because that's where I believe we're lacking. I don't believe Guyana's cost of living is particularly through the roof at the moment. I think it's something that can be managed if we can have the ability to earn more. So at this point in time, for example, with our oil earnings, we should have been able to already, with our population of less than 1 million people, we should have already been able to reduce taxes for our citizens to ensure that there's more income in their pockets. There's more spending power. And when we look at things like, for example, PAYE, we have to wonder to ourselves, well, why is that burden still on the citizens? Now, I say burden because, well, I'll be the first to say, as someone in the political world, I am not 100% sure where the PAYE taxes are going, okay? But more important than that, if you were to look at the 2024 budget, our $1.1 trillion budget, only 8% of that $1.1 trillion was contributed by taxpayers, by personal income tax. So the question that you have to ask yourself is, if the budget of this country is not dependent on taxpayers' dollars, why are we still paying such high taxes? All that money can go right back into the citizens' pockets, the employees' pockets. So PAY, VAT can be reduced. NIS at the moment that people are, has been a perpetual struggle in this country. All of these things can be reduced to put more money back in the pockets of Guyanese. So at this point in time, obviously, rather than thinking how much more difficult, what we can do to bring down the cost of living, because taxes can be reduced, that automatically brings down cost of living, but it also puts more money in the people's pockets. On top of that, I think we have to start realizing that we are not producing enough here in Guyana. I have been very fortunate, and I know Althea actually as well, over the past couple of months, has been fortunate to travel to a country, one of our neighbors, Brazil, who's unbelievably self-sustainable. And when you look at the cost of living in countries like that, in which they're producing everything that they need, their taxes on imported goods are screwed through the roof because they produce so much. Now, in a country like Guyana, that's right next to them, same climate, same farming situation, same possible manufacturing situation. The question is, why is Guyana not reaching this potential? Why have we not started to produce as much? Why have we not become more self-sustainable? So that, as far as management goes, coupled with the fact that we have the oil income now to reduce taxes, really and truly, that should be more than enough to compensate on our cost of living. I mean, something as simple as, let's say you wanted to look at maybe some luxuries, for example. Why exactly are we paying over 100% on duties for vehicles? of her four-door vehicles. I mean, little things like that. Why is that burden on the taxpayers, especially if you don't need it to contribute towards the economic development of the country? It's only 8% of the budget. So I don't think we can affect the cost outside of Guyana and what goods are being manufactured for outside of Guyana, but we can do more to produce here in Guyana, and we can definitely reduce taxes to ease the cost of living burden on the citizens.
I've said a lot there, but we'll get back to some of those issues. I want to just, before we get into the role of third parties and ethnic voting in Guyana, I want to jump to another topic briefly. The teachers are now threatening another strike. They went on strike for a little over 4 weeks. They're saying the government is not willing to negotiate with them anymore. They call off the negotiations. They have a court case on Wednesday, and based on the outcome of that court case, they're ready to go back on strike. Mr. Jabour, what do you think of the teachers going on strike?
I'll tell you this unequivocally. I am in more than support of the teachers fighting for a livable wage. I cannot wrap my head around or fathom the people out there that are saying that the teachers don't deserve more. Even at $200,000 a month, take out less their taxes, which is, as all employees know, around 30 to 40% of their salaries. Who can live on that? Much less the teachers that are taking care of our children and shaping the future minds of the country. I cannot understand it. Of course, the teachers have to be paid more. There is no question about it. All of us in this country are feeling the cost of living burden. I mean, between the teachers and the nurses and the doctors, how can this even be an argument that they don't deserve a livable wage? I will support them in every way, shape, or form in order for them to get that livable wage. Now, I guess the conversation does turn into what is a livable wage. Now, that's not a hard calculation to make. I did a very basic calculation myself a couple months back, and it went around quite a bit. What I had done is I'd taken all the expenses of a single parent living in Guyana and what their cost of living should be before taxes, and it's almost $240,000 now. $240,000, and that's what they need to take home just to cover their basic expenses. Now, you tell me how many teachers are earning that. So right off the bat, I can tell you through the research that I've done, and I challenge anybody to sit down and do this calculation, how much it costs for a single person to live, pay rent, pay electricity, buy food, transportation, a little miscellaneous, I mean, healthcare and spending money. I mean, how much do they need? And if you can convince me, if you can prove to me that's less than $200,000, then, hat off to you. But I've done the math, and I can tell you that it's definitely $200,000 and above. So with that being said, the teachers deserve every penny more that they're fighting for, and they deserve all of us here as citizens to support it. Just to clarify something as well, I think it's despicable to hear people use the excuse that teachers don't work as much as anybody else. And I've heard lots, especially of the PPP supporters, stating that. And I think it's disgusting for anyone to claim that teachers do not work as hard as everybody else. Everyone knows what teachers go through. They look after our children all day. They go home, they mark papers. In the summertime, when we claim they get to take summers off, they still have to build curriculums. They still have to set up exams. They still have to prepare. Okay? So when you sit down there and you think that teachers are not working as hard, then I'm sorry. I reject anyone in society, especially in a society that, like Guyana, that's trying to develop, that is not supporting each other, that thinks that teachers don't work hard enough to earn a livable wage. So in every way, shape, or form, again, I do support their action, and whether it be in court or whether it be in strike, to fight for a better income, a better livable wage.
Will ANOC support the teachers' strike if they should go back and strike?
Not only support, Althea and I have both been on the road with them already. I carry out drinks out there. I financially contributed to their cause. We do as much as we can, at least in forums like this, bring at least recognition to what they're doing. So everyone has to lend their voice to this. Not only the teachers supporting the teachers, but the parents as well. I have a 12-year-old daughter. Think about it. If these people that are teaching our children, these regular citizens, can't take care of themselves, how do we expect them to take care of their children, of our children? Come on. If we want the best for our children, doesn't that mean the people that are looking after them need to be given the best? Is that hard to think? Not to mention, and I think this is an important point, I want you to name one teacher or one nurse or one doctor that has gotten into that profession to get rich. No, nobody does that. Nobody that becomes a teacher thinks to themselves, oh, I'm going to study and become a teacher because I want to, drive a Ferrari. Nobody says that. They do that because they love what they do. They do it because that's their calling. They do it to give back to society. So I'm sorry, them fighting for a livable wage when it gets all the way to protest, it means that's how desperate they are, just to live. Not because they're trying to earn more money to travel or to buy, fancy things and clothes and so on. They're doing it to survive, right?
Thanks. Ms. King, CXC, CAPE, and all these exams just around the corner. If the teachers should go on strike, as is looming or is threatening, what do you think will happen to these students? Why are we sacrificing students' future?
Now, it's interesting because recently I had to do a poll sampling research. We had research week for my faculty. And we had to do a poll sampling, and we had to choose a topic on what we were going to research. So my topic was the impact of the teachers' strike on students. Exactly this. And most of what we get out of that was it not only affected, okay, let's focus before I divert into other factors. There are many students who they will stay home, or there is an alternative for extra lessons somewhere if it is possible to make that arrangement by the parent. It not only affects the students and their progress in their academic field, it basically slows them into that curriculum, into the pace of the curriculum that they have to be. Then it affects now their parents who are working. These are underage kids, by the way. Yes, they're big, but in some areas it is not safe. We already see what happens when children are left unattended at home. There can be a fire that breaks out at home. It's very dangerous at this point to leave any child unattended at home, right? And I have seen family members who actually had to take that risk because the parents have to go out there and work. We just come off the topic of the high cost of living and sustainability and basically trying to survive, manage your expense, cutting back on stuff, making sacrifices. And then you have a teacher strike, which impacts the education and the academic growth of these students with their exams right around the corner. Now you, just to add a little bit to what was said with the previous question that you asked, Kian, sometimes it seems as though education is not as important. We have had teachers strike before, yes. I do not remember in recent memory, the teachers strike ever being this long to even have a second strike. In my opinion, it should not have even had to go beyond 1 week because education is one of the most sacred pillars in our society. This is where every sector and department that our society functions under comes from, is developed under. So I do not understand how we can reach a level to treat the teachers in such a manner that there cannot be a negotiation happen right away or immediately, or it makes me feel like the essence of education and the essence of our students and the essence of youths and the leadership that they will have to be leading with in the future is not as relevant as it used to be. And it is detrimental. It is a detrimental factor for the students' education and their preparation for the exam at this time that is going to be affected. And
go ahead.
Yeah, and especially for those students who do not have the alternative to benefit from an extracurricular lesson to keep up with their curriculum at this point, with their preparation for the exam. It is those students that are suffering at this point. The ones in it can be both in the private or public, but they are being deprived of that curricular growth right now.
Okay. Now, Mr. Jabour, we're now going to turn to our topic. As you know, I guess you know, that in 1964, United Force was a third party in Guyana between the PEP and the PNC. They had X amount of seats, I think it was 4 seats or whatever seats they had, and they joined with the PNC and dislodged the PEP from office. That coalition lasted until 68, when the PNC regime on the force wanted to discard them. And what happened after, we all know already. Now, the AFC, it was another third force that had some viability. In 2011, they held the reins of power in Parliament. I mean, they had, I think, was 7 seats. So none of the 2 parties had at least majority. And in 2015, the AFC joined with PNC and dislodged the PP from office. But it has been alleged that the Granger administration did not treat the AFC members that well in Parliament and so forth, and government and so forth. But they lasted throughout the 5 years, even though they had a no confidence motion. Now, I want you to tell me the role of third parties, in particular ANOG. Do you think ANOG could hold the reins of power in next year's election? Balance of power?
I think we have to first understand, before I comment on whether we can, I think it's important to understand that, first of all, it's possible. I think that's the first message that needs to go out there to voters, is understanding that we've seen it before, and in our more recent history in 2015, in 2011, when a minority government did exist.
Right.
I think it's important for voters to understand that the possibility of holding our governments, both the PPP and the PNC, accountable is necessary and possible. All right. So when I look at our history, I think it answers itself as to what the issue is. Now, as a young politician myself, I think rather than having joined PPP when I got into politics, rather having joined PNC when I got into politics, rather joining AFC, rather joining any other party for that matter, I realized that we have to have a third party that's founded on a principle of being that independent voice. And I helped to found ANOG. I got involved with ANOG up to this point that I'm now the chairman. And what I can say about my current situation and political ideology is that ANOG will never, ever join the PPP or the PNC. And I can say that because I was part of the 2020 saga that worked to get the APNU AFC out of office after what had happened. And now, I think everyone who follows me or follows ANOG or follows Tim or Althea or any other ANOG member can realize that we are the ones that are speaking out independently against what is happening with the corruption in the government, against mismanagement and cronyism and everything on those fronts. So if you're going to wonder to yourself whether or not ANUG will ever join PPP or PNC, the answer is never. Okay, especially not as long as I'm part of the organization, because the minute they do, I will absolutely leave and never look back. Okay, because I believe that this country needs a minority government, a minority parliament, in order for there to be accountability with whoever is in power. Now, the question is whether or not it's possible is, again, absolutely yes. All right. What I'd like to do in these cases, I like to show the numbers. Now, first of all, in 2011, we had a minority, all right, with AFC holding the balance of power. And then what happened in 2015, when all of this country and any unbiased voter, any citizen that can look at things from both angles can remember that in 2015, when this entire country was tired of PPP's corruption and bullyism and victimization and those types of things, everybody was tired of it, all right, and decided we need something fresh and new, and everybody got on board with APNU AFC as the change that's needed, and the new face that they put on, even though they were still PNC. They only won, the APNU AFC only won by 1 seat. 1 seat, as everybody knows in this country, is only 6,000 votes, thereabouts, give or take. Now, fast forward to 2020, APNU AFC did a horrible job in government. The economy became stagnant. The development was not what the people expected. There was all corruption when it came to the oil deals, etc. We realized, well, this is not what we wanted. And the entire country, followed by a no confidence motion, the entire country decided, you know what, we are done with APNU AFC, and they were going back to PPP. All right. Now, come fast forward to 2020 election. The PPP are currently now only in power by 1 single seat. All right. That's only 6,000 votes. So when you think that there's these large shifts that are going on with the voter basis, well, we know historically that it only takes 2 or 3 seats in order to hold the balance of power in Guyana. And what we're quickly realizing, especially right now, and again, any unbiased voter can see, is that you cannot tell me that there are not 10,000 people out there, 15,000 people out there that are not happy with the way this country is being run and are definitely not going back to the APNU AFC. And we saw that in the 2020 election, because I think it was 7 third parties that ran in the 2020 election. And if you were to accumulate all of the votes put together by the 7 third parties that ran, it's almost 10,000 votes. There would have been a minority government if all third party voters voted for one single party. So it is there. The possibility is extremely high. All right. And we've been seeing it when it comes to suppression in the media, when it comes to this Asha Kissoon situation, that as of right now, both the PPP and the PNC are trying to keep ANUG out of Parliament and out of the limelight and out of the media. And they realize we're going to have that platform when we get into Parliament. So that possibility is growing every single day. I mean, let's just talk about let's just look at the population and how they're feeling right now about blackouts, and look at both PPP and PNC just blaming each other. No, it's both of their responsibilities. And we've realized now that these 2 parties are incompetent. They have no care in the world. The teachers struck under APNU AFC tenure, and now they're striking again, which means both of these parties are doing the same thing. All right. And at some point in time, the people of this country are going to realize, and I feel are slowly, well, at this stage now, quickly realizing that there needs to be accountability. There needs to be a party in the middle. Now, just to understand what it means to be a third party in the middle, just very quickly. You know, a lot of people sit down there and they continue to question whether or not ANUG will make the right decisions for the country. Well, guess what? For all of you out there that, you know, have a head on your shoulders and can understand what this means, can understand what democracy means. It means majority rule. All right. And at the end of the day, if the PPP and the PNC get majority of the votes in this country, then we believe that it is the right of the PNC and the PPP to make the decisions for the majority of the country, for the population. Now, ANUG's job is not to stand up there and to make decisions for all the people that didn't vote for us. But what it does, if ANUG gets that balance of power in the middle, it will force PPP and PNC to work together. And because that will happen, all Guyanese will be represented in the decision-making process. And that is what is critical in order for this country to move forward. Not when one side is benefiting for their people and giving their friends and family jobs, and the corrupt deals are only benefiting one side, right? Everyone needs to have a little bit of accountability, put both of them at the table, and let's make decisions that all Guyanese will benefit from. And that's ANUG's role coming into that third party seat, to hold the balance of power. Not to ever join PPP and PNC, but to make sure that the two of them are working together to benefit all Guyanese.
If ANUG holds the balance of power in the next election, and either the PEP or the PNC has a minority government, will ANUG support one or the other in passing bills in Parliament?
I don't think it's about supporting one or the other. It's not about choosing sides. It's about who's doing what's best for Guyanese. Now, I'll tell you right off the bat, if a party, if PPP comes in and says we are reducing duties on vehicles to 10% across the board, we will support that, because we know that none of that money is needed to go towards the budget, or that 8% of what it contributes is meaningless when it comes to the economic growth of the country. All right. When if PNC comes forward and says we are reducing PAYE to 15%, to 10%, we will get on board with that, because that will benefit Guyanese. So it's not about taking sides. It's about who's proposing legislation that will benefit all Guyanese. And if it takes it, ANUG stands ready with the legal minds behind it, as everybody knows of the Timothy Jonas and the Ralph Ramkarat, to ensure that we move forward in putting legislation forward to benefit all Guyanese. Something like raising, for example, this negotiation as brought up earlier with teachers. We absolutely support the raise in salaries for teachers. It's necessary. We have the income for it now. Okay, it can be sustained. So the question is, reduce a little bit of these construction projects that are been ongoing for years now, and give some to the human capital. Give some of that money to the people of the country. Okay, and that's what ANUG will support, whether it comes from both sides, either side, or whether it comes from us. Decisions have to be made for all Guyanese now, not just one side or the next.
Ms. King, you are slated to be the member of Parliament to replace Ms. Kissoon. Now, the Liberal and Justice Party under Mr. Schuman was there for what, 2.5 years? Because they had the most votes. Anna had the second most votes. Why did Anna take the seat when Mr. Schuman resigned? Why give it to the third party that had just 200-something votes, Ms. Kissoon Party, TSM, and now she doesn't want to give up the seat? Anna should have been the party to take that seat in Parliament and then serve X amount of months, and then in the final months to give it to Ms. Kissoon. Why Anna did not do that?
Well, that's true. That could have happened. But at that time, we had a meeting, and that was actually requested. If she could have taken that time before, just in case we had gone in and there was an early calling for election, and then she was not able to carry out I think it was 91 days, which was her time.
3 months, yeah.
Right? So it was, we just did the bigger thing. We saw that this is a young lady who was the presidential candidate of her party. She has been on the front line as well for her party. She has been taking part there in the recount, and she has been fighting for the good cause. She has been promoting that to everybody here. So we thought, why not give the opportunity to a very smart young lady who is a doctor and wants to represent her party, wants to do the right thing, give her the time first before us. We already have 2 years, the remaining 2 years to fulfill that duty there. So at that time, we did the right thing in the sake of integrity and respect for her and respect for the request that she asked us, and we give it to her to do that time.
Now, the next question I will ask you, How do you think of her now not giving up her seat?
So we, the LJP and the TNM and New and United Guyana got together. They signed a MOU, which was basically a contract of understanding, a memorandum of understanding that we are going to join our votes. We have the rules in place as to how we're going to have this process taking place. And then we do it with mere integrity. This here was, it's a starting point for people to be able to see that there is third party who are working together in collaboration and with integrity. This whole thing is supposed to be about integrity, right? And you given the opportunity to do that, it comes as a shock when it's not fulfilled, especially the role that you play in society, the profession that you have there, and what you have been standing for all this time. It is not something that was expected. We understand that this is politics and things may happen, but at the same time, we are here with just our integrity, our reputation, and whoever thought that we would want that there is actually someone who would risk that and put that on the line. At least I, for once, when I join or I join any political party or anything to do with politics, I personally would not waste my time to be around individuals who I cannot trust, who does not show some ground of integrity or show some ground of moral and ethic and standard. So I personally cannot see myself doing that. The way I was brought up, there is no family member that would even support me, and they would probably take me down worse than the way the public can even do for me. I personally cannot do that for myself. So this is the kind of ethics that we carry in our party. This is what we uphold. And of course, it did come as a shock that one person was not able to fulfill that duty. We cannot make the decision for everybody. Everybody stands on their own to act morally right according to society. And what we can only do is give the opportunity for those to prove themselves.
Okay. Mr. Jabour, where that stands now, who is the person to recall, the person controlling the list for recalling?
Fantastic question. I think it's good to update the public on the current situation on where we are at the moment. As of middle of last week, we got a message that we got through Gerald Ford that GCOM had informed him that they have no documentation of resignation of Gerald Ford from the list, meaning as far as GCOM's documentation goes, Gerald Ford is still the head of the list. Now, what Asha was trying to portray was that because Gerald Ford resigned from the party, it means he was no longer head of the list. But that's not how the laws of the electoral process works. Now, a separate resignation would have to be done to GCOM to remove, by himself to be removed as the head of the list. Now, why that's relevant is I think the public needs to understand that the party in itself is not an entity outside of the list, meaning anyone can join the party, anyone can come, anyone can go. But once that list of 65 names are handed in to GCOM, that is the party now. Those 65 people make up the party as far as GCOM and the law is concerned. Now, when it came to this current situation, Asha actually entered Parliament on the authority of somebody that should not be or is not legally allowed to give her that authority. I think his name is Kenrick Morgan, if I'm right. And right. And what had happened is Asha, on her own free will, on her own authority, decided that she was making Kenrick Morgan the head of the list. Now, that is illegal in the eyes of GCOM. All right. So when this process has reached the stage that it's at now and the investigation has been done, GCOM realized that Gerald Ford has not resigned from the head of the list. He just resigned from the party. Okay. And because of that, Gerald Ford now still holds the authority to remove and recall Asha Kissoon from Parliament. So as of right now, because that letter was handed into the Speaker, I believe 3 weeks ago, as of that moment, Asha Kissoon currently is no longer a parliamentarian because Gerald Ford, the head of the list, has recalled her. Now, where we currently stand is as GCOM has already said that Gerald Ford is the head of the list, it now falls on the shoulders of the Speaker to act. Now, the Speaker has gotten the recall letter. He's acknowledged that he's received it, as the public knows. And now we are waiting to see if he will remove Asha Kissoon and ask GCOM for her replacement, which naturally will be Althea King from that point on. All right, if the Speaker does not remove Asha Kissoon before the next sitting of Parliament, well then we know legally that a process will have to take place. And we're going to have to cross that bridge when we get to it. But what I think the public needs to ask themselves is why would the Speaker, knowing GCOM has already said and agreed that Gerald Ford is the head of the list, Gerald Ford sent the Speaker the list on his authority, how come the Speaker is not acting on this now? Because at this point in time, Asha is still currently receiving a salary from Parliament. So the question now is, why is the Speaker not acting in removing Asha?
Ms. King, do you think Asha's behavior will dampen third-party unity in the country?
It definitely does, right? Because when we have the representation that we have here in politics, here, especially when we come to talking about the role of third parties, as we have just discussed, it is very, very important that we, the third party, we seem like if we are a solution to end any corrupt behavior or to end any act that doesn't seem trustworthy. How can we gain votes of people if they cannot be able to trust us? So what Asha has done has basically put the integrity of trust, not just in politics, in every single aspect now of your life. It can be your professional life, can be your personal life. It is something for me that stains whatever transaction you're trying to do to advance yourself now. From now on, people will always now have a raised eyebrow as to what if this person goes back on their word, unless there is some legally binding something, to actually prosecute this person if they act immorally or something like that. It's a very definite act, in my opinion, or a very bold and atrocious act, in my opinion, to actually put your trust, put your integrity on the line like that, for the whole world to see, to make a decision that puts yourself in a place like that. So in the eyes of the public now, who have to trust you, I don't think it shows bad all third parties, it just shows bad on this individual, because this individual from the beginning acted on their own. This individual in the beginning was the one who was trying to get, you know, her motives in front there. It's someone who had taken advantage of the loyalty of another party who put their trust in you. So in my opinion, what it does is dampen and stains only what Asha Kisoon stands for, and not generally all third party.
Okay. Now, if you're to enter Parliament, I know your age, but don't tell your age over the phone. You'll be the youngest member ever in the Parliament of Guyana, the history of the Parliament of Guyana. What examples do you intend to show to the youths like your age and younger?
I do believe that, as I had mentioned before, the youths, they are the future leader of our country, of our nation. And this comes back to why it's even important to have youths being part of our political system and our political landscape, and to be involved in when it comes to anything to do with the decision making regarding the welfare of our country and the people living in the country and the systems that are being put in place in the country. It is very critical for youths to be a part of that, not only as part of their preparation, as it will be for me. It will be a rigid preparation, actually, because we know the arena of politics. It's not as simple. It can be complex, it can be challenging, and there are many areas that challenge you as an individual. It also challenges your integrity, from example that we just listed. But the example that I'm setting is to stand strong on your ground, stand strong on your moral. Find what you want to represent, who you want to represent, and what you want to do for the citizens of Guyana. Maybe there was something that you didn't benefit from and you would like to see change, and you're here now making change that you see. I think it's very critical for youths to see someone making that impact, standing their ground, have the necessary support system around them, respecting. There's also a very important role for youths to respect the arena that they're in, because there is diversity in politics. There are women in politics, there are youths in politics, there are different ethnic background in politics, there are senior, well-experienced and advanced people in politics, and we have to respect the diverse opinions that are coming, understand what constructive criticism is, hold your ground, and be morally respectful, and be readily able to learn from your environment, observe, and then apply and be effective and efficient in what you do. That is basically the example that I want to set. If I get the opportunity to represent that area, even if I don't get this opportunity, there will be other opportunities that I will have to represent youths in the continuous fight in the political arena. And the greater good, I should say, for the country should always be the aim. Putting the welfare of everyone before yourself. I know it's something very difficult for young people or anyone, matter of fact, to understand what that even means. But you want to do right, there's sometimes you have to look at the bigger picture, how it benefits people more than how it might even put you out of your comfort zone to represent that objective or that goal that you might want to accomplish one day and set and make a difference in.
Okay. Mr. Jabour, do you and your party believe in inclusivity? Meaning, let me explain it, that if there are more than one party, the other party should have seats in parliament and also have ministerial positions. some put forth the thesis that it never happened in countries. They should be corrected. It happened in Israel as we speak. It happened in France as we speak. And it happened in about 2 or 3 Scandinavian countries, where other parties joined with the party with the most seats, and they were given ministerial positions in parliament. So do you believe in inclusivity in that sense, that other parties will join with the party with the most seats and get become a minister in government?
I think the first thing that we have to remember and understand here in Guyana is, and I think it's lacking, is we should have ministers that are put in place through merit. All right? Right now, it's just party loyalty, because essentially all that we have as ministers are yes men and yes women. So when you ask of inclusivity when it comes to parties joining, well, first of all, I think it's important to say the parties can't join after election, as you know. All right? So joining is not the option, but whether or not ministerial positions should be taken up by opposition members of government, that's something that I think I can get behind as long as it's based on merit. Now, there are lots of very capable people in the APNU AFC, in ANUG, in PPP. Now, I think what the country needs is the opportunity for those capable people to all put their heads together. And what we have right now is this tug of war blame game in which all the heads, all the capable people are not seeing eye to eye and are just fighting basically for political relevance and power, right? So what I think needs to first happen before inclusivity is, I think the purse strings from central government need to be redirected. I think that's where it all lies. The issue with the country that we have at the moment is all the money stems straight from the presidency and cabinet. And because of that type of approval, you don't have systems in place for other people to make independent decisions. All right? You only have one group of people making all the decisions. And we all, our president, our executive presidency, the president is the end all and be all of decision making in Guyana. He constitution with Burnham and those who participated in that time, that they ensured that the president maintained control. So I think that's probably the first constitutional reform that needs to be looked at, and that's the distribution of power coming down, a decentralization of power that needs to happen. So when you ask about parties working together and collaboration, I think that can be a moot point if the decentralization of power can occur. Because once systems are put in place, it doesn't matter who's in power, all right? Once systems are put in place for accountability and transparency, the fact of the matter is all Guyanese will benefit and will be able to challenge and will be able to ensure that the laws are being followed and the process is being followed and everyone is benefiting. And that's what needs to be put in place, proper systems, not proper people necessarily, all right? And I think that's what's missing. I think we keep basing this country and the political power of this country on people. And the problem that we have with that is when people change or people get a taste of that power, as we're seeing with Ashik soon, as we see with every government that promises constitutional reform or to change the laws when they go in power, which is back and forth between PPP and PAC, and they never do it. Because once they get into that power seat, they realize, wait a second, why would I ever give up any power? So the system has to change, not the people, all right?
Ms. King, ethnic voting. Let me premise my words by saying this, and I want everyone to listen to me very, very carefully. We cannot be in denial. Ethnic voting is entrenched in Guyana's politics. The vast majority of Indians will vote for the PEP. The vast majority of Blacks will vote for the PNC. And the Amerindian votes will go here or there. PEP will get taken and so forth. But the two major ethnic groups, the vast majority, I'm not saying all, so I don't want anyone to respond to me said all, the vast majority of Indians, let me repeat, will vote for the PEP. The vast majority of Blacks will vote for the PNC. Anyone who fails to acknowledge that are in denial. It's in Guyana, it was been entrenched since in the 50s, coming on to the 60s, and it remains that way. It does not change. Do you think the young people in Guyana will avenge themselves and to change ethnic voting and vote, instead of vote along racial lines, they'll vote based on policies and so forth, Ms. King?
So that's a very I am an example actually of that answer. So we come from a culture. We come from that culture of that same ethnocentric voting system. And I'm glad that you clarified that, because indeed I've had this conversation before with people, and there are still persons indeed with that denial. Really glad that you brought that firsthand on the table there and lay it off. So acknowledging that we come from that culture, I did come from a PNC family. From as long as I know, I actually looked at one of my picture that I was getting up for another interview, and I saw on the house that I was living in had big PNC, and I was probably like 3 or 2 years old. So I, like Mr. Jabour would have mentioned, he come from a family that supported the PPP. I come from a family that supported the PNC. And you look at our ethnicity and, you know, it's right there. When I decided that this was not for me was when I was exposed to something, to a different message that did not involve the other two. Because for me, this was the only two parties that existed. Yes, I understood that AFC was there, but at that time, I was still young and I was still under the roof of my parents, and I was still heavily influenced by what my culture, what my family comes from. And I still have family that support the PNC. And I still have some family that came over with me and say, we don't want this anymore. I think the youths have realized and our eyes are open to what is happening. We do not want to follow the trend of ethnic voting. This is not about ethnic voting anymore. This is about who is the most qualified leader to lead us and lead this country in a very dynamic way that benefits the youth. Especially the youth they're looking at their education. They're looking at how they're able to move freely without being assaulted. They're looking at if they're even able to come out the house and crime is not properly controlled. They're looking at if they have the opportunity to invest and have a business at a young age. They're looking at if they're able to have a land by the time they're finished school. There are many things that youths are looking at. Now they're looking to see which of these party, which of the administration is better equipped or able to give us and attend to these basic necessities that we are now becoming concerned and worried of, since we're now coming out of school, we're being adults, we're entering into the adult life, we got to support ourselves. There's some parents who are going to keep us in until, you know, we can stand on our own 2 feet, while there's not. So now we're looking at the logical circumstances of things. So in my opinion, I think the youths have definitely come out of that that culture. We're the one who is actually breaking that culture, because we're looking at the logical aspect of it, and we're looking to see who exactly is better equipped to sustain this country and lead this country in a dignified way. I think that is what we reason with now. We reason with more logic than culture. We're breaking this trend now because our livelihood now is at stake. We're concerned with how we are going to sustain ourselves when our parents are no longer here, when we do not have the support and we have to be independent, and we want to be, or we choose to be independent, or we choose to start a family soon. These things are more concerning than what the culture has been doing for forever, especially if it doesn't make sense. Well, how does it make sense? How does it benefit me if I just vote for someone just because they have the same skin color as me? It doesn't make sense anymore for us. It doesn't cut it anymore for us.
The political culture in Guyana, Mr. Jabour, is based strictly on vindictive behavior. I want all my listeners to listen carefully. I'm not apportioning blame on any party, but that is the political culture in Guyana. Vindictiveness, nepotism, and cronyism. How you think that can be changed? If it could be changed at all.
Accountability. You know, I think what's sad about what we watch in Guyana over and over, whether it be PNC or PPP in government, is the fact that none of the decision makers are ever held accountable. And I think that is what is holding this country back. As I said before, the systems need to be in place for it to happen. But we look at examples. I mean, look at what happened with Madio, with the Madio fire, the dorm fire in Madio. Up to this point, 20 of our children lost their lives and no one can be held accountable. That was a state-run school. They were in the care of the government and no one can take responsibility for it. No one is held accountable for it. 20 children lost their lives under this PPP government's rule. And no one in the government is willing to take responsibility. They just continue the blame game. That's what's disgusting. All right. You cannot expect any sort of progress or leadership development if there is no accountability. I mean, look at GPL right now. Look at what's going on in Guyana as we speak. Just to touch on something that's so much less important. But we're getting blackouts every single day, multiple times a day, because the leadership has not done their job to ensure that the systems are upgraded and maintained. Now, what more are you expecting here? What do you think is going to happen as far as the country developing or the leadership qualities developing when all these two parties do is blame each other? PPP has now blamed APNU for the Madia fire and for the blackouts that are currently ongoing, both of which happened under their rule. When APNU was in power and all the things that were going wrong, whatever it was, whether it be crime or economic stagnation, they blamed the PPP. So nobody's taking responsibility. And at the end of the day, the problem in this country is accountability. And that's why I can stand here and say I fight for a third party the way I do, because that's the only way that we're going to get accountability, is if we force it, is if we can stand up in Parliament and we can say, no, you are not passing this budget until you've accounted for the money that you've taken from the last budget. And that is what needs to occur. That type of accountability is what needs to happen for this country to move forward. No, you are not passing a law that will only benefit your friends and family. The laws have to benefit all Guyanese. So I'm sitting here every day on a daily basis, wondering why all Guyanese are not given the opportunity that obviously the selected few are, that are friends and family of the PPP, and we're wondering what more can we expect if there's no accountability and no transparency from these organizations.
Good governance, and I'm going to use your word, is based on accountability, transparency, independence of the judiciary and other institutional frameworks, or the separation of branches and so forth. Mr. Jabour, do you think we ever had good governance in Guyana?
Well, I'd have to get a little technical with that question. The truth is, we have a very big issue in this country with the separation of powers.
I'm not talking about that, going back to whenever times.
Have we ever had it?
Yeah.
No, we can't have had it if if we've had an executive presidency, if we've had consecutive governments that can fire and hire people they please in the positions that they're in, as we know right now. I mean, oh geez, I'm not the historian, but I can't remember when we've had the last confirmed chief justice, chancellor, police chief, or anything for those matters, because both consecutive governments have decided on their own that we're going to keep them in these acting positions so that they have control over their decision-making processes. Meaning, if the police chief right now, because he's an acting police chief, makes a decision that goes against the ruling government, goes against the PPP, the president has the authority to fire him. So how can you expect any kind of like you said, good governance if the government in control, whether it be PPP or PNC, have both showed that they want to just maintain power, that they're just going to sit there and ensure they control all the separation of powers, the judiciary, as we speak. When is the last time we've had a confirmed chancellor? When is the last time we had a confirmed chief justice? Both these, and right now, we probably have the best chief justice that any country can ask for. Probably one of the most unbiased people in this country. Probably one of the people that have the most integrity of any Guyanese at the moment. And she has showed it, Justice Roxanne George. She showed it over and over and over again. Why is she not confirmed? Especially now that the PNC, the AP and UAFC has agreed to confirm her. Why is the PPP not confirmed her? And we saw it come up in the recent UN Human Rights Commission questioning. We've seen it come up in all the analysis of what's going on in Guyana through all the organizations. All of the embassies and so forth have spoken about it. So when you ask for good governance of accountability, it can't happen if the separation of powers don't exist. And when last they existed, I'm sorry. Honestly, I'm too young to have remembered. I wouldn't have been as involved as I
have a question for Mr. Rose, actually.
Go ahead.
So, do you think that Dr. Chetty Jagan was part of good governance?
It's King. I'm supposed to be the one asking questions.
The reason why I asked that is because I have heard from all ethnicities, any ethnicities, and remember I wasn't around, or I wasn't old enough that time to distinguish for myself, but I have always heard from everyone that he did a good job, and he was a very good government, a good president.
Okay.
That's what I was asking to see if you agreed, so it would complete that everyone indeed that responded to that question said was good.
Well, my opinion will not count anyway. But let me ask you this question though. Lord Acton, and I know you don't know of him, a famous British philosopher, said, "Power corrupts absolutely, and absolute power corrupts absolutely." Do you believe that's true?
Say it again, sorry?
Lord Acton, the famous British philosopher, says, "Power corrupts absolutely, and absolute power corrupts absolutely."
Power.
You're a member of Parliament. I have to bring these questions to you.
Power corrupts.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And absolute power corrupts absolutely.
And absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, okay. I agree. I agree that okay. It depends. So I'm going to say in what context I agree with this. I agree if that's the sole purpose, if that is your only goal and your only objective, it will definitely entice a corrupt nature.
Okay.
If I'm to elaborate a little bit more, power should not be the aim of, if we're, especially if we're using it, particularly if we're using it in the context of leadership. Power is not the ultimate goal in leadership. Good leadership is the ultimate goal in good leadership. So if power now becomes the attribute of, or the motivation behind why you're doing what you're doing, unfortunately, it can invite and entice any corrupt behavior, corrupt thinking, corrupt nature. That's as basic as I can get with that.
Okay, okay. Mr. Jabour, I have a question for you from a famous philosopher again. He says, a nation prosperity is not measured by the number of infrastructures, projects it builds, but by the absence of poverty, good health, care, efficiency in public schools, and its literacy rate. What have you to say to that? Want me to read it back?
No, I've heard it before.
Okay.
It's an interesting statement because it's something just today, when I was reading the headlines of about the teachers thinking about striking again, and then I took into consideration, obviously what we've been talking about. It's a common topic, but the blackouts and the people that are suffering, and I joined those two thoughts, and that statement, what came to mind was, first, a society, we keep praising, for example, the children that have, the 10 students that have done fabulously in Common Entrance. But we're not talking about the 50% that have failed math and English over and over, year after year. Now, we can only judge a country's development by how well taken care of our weakest people are. And when I look at things like their pension, when I look at things like our disability infrastructure, when I look at opportunities for people with a high school education, or people even without a high school education, now single mothers, again, when it comes to public schools and infrastructure, or curriculum and the opportunities that they are given. At the end of the day, you quickly realize that the weakest people in Guyana are given the short end of the stick, have it the hardest. So when we keep, I just saw, it had to be a couple hours ago, Vice President Barry Jagdio's Facebook page still posting road works in some village. And I'm sitting there going, I don't understand what you're asking us for here. You're asking us to praise you that you're building a road with our taxpayers' dollars, with our money, for a job that you applied to do. And we must praise you for it while we sit here in blackout. Now, it blows my mind that anyone, and the Entrenched party supporters are going to sit down there, and you can see them in the comments right now. I laugh because I have my other device going here. And you read it and you realize that these people, again, all fake accounts, are just sent out here to lead the blind. And what I've quickly realized, when I got into politics, is that the government wants you to praise them for the roads that they're building with your money. And their job is to ensure that you stay uneducated and underexposed. That's their job. Now, why do I say that? Because the less people understand, the less people know, is the easier you can control them. Now, I think there's other words for it, like crumbing and so on, where they're just dropping the bare minimum for you while they, take the lion's share of whatever this country is earning. And I sit there and ask people, I saw another headline today about how much Guyana has earned. It was like $100 and something billion US in oil revenue already. And I laughed to myself because I'm like, well, all I've seen so far is 3 roads. We have constant blackout. We have teachers striking. We have the same roads that they're screaming, give me praise for, that are already breaking up and being repaired every couple months. And I'm sitting there saying, well, what exactly or where exactly has the money gone? Because the country's never been poor. The country, as everyone knows, between bauxite, sugar, timber, rice, gold, diamonds, sand, everything, all the resources we've ever had. Now the question is, we all know that Guyana has always been a rich country. Everybody in the history, you heard it over and over. Guyana could be the breadbasket if managed correctly. Now that we have more money, now that we have hundreds of billions of US dollars of free money, as Timothy Jonas likes to say, what development are we referring to? What exactly is the progress that we are speaking about? Because as you just said, a country has to be, as the philosopher has said, a country is based on its education principles, on its treating its weakest members, and ensuring that they're safe and protected and taken care of. Now, at the end of the day, when you sit down and assess what's going on in Guyana and look at the numbers, that's not happening. All you have is a government that's posting a whole bunch of headlines and speaking directly to their supporters, the ones commenting here. Because I'd like anybody here to sit down there and say that the government is not to blame for blackout. The PPP government, the current government, is clearly to blame for blackouts. We had it 6 months ago. What have they been doing for the last 6 months, right? And at the end of the day, we read the headlines that the vice president and the president stand up there and say, well, blame APNU. We need blame APNU from 4 years ago. They were only there for 5 years. You've been there for 4 years now. How have you, and have unlimited money, how have you not solved the problem? And that's what you're seeing more and more of now, right? Just the blame game of poor governance and incompetence. And then they're just passing the blame game. I just want to revert back to another question. I found it so interesting with the race base that you brought up with, and you asked Althea, of these two parties, both of these parties that are entrenched in their ethno race-based voting patterns. And what I say to both parties every time they say, "Oh, we're not racist, the other one's racist," I say, well, the day that your party, whether it be PPP or PNC, put a presidential candidate up for election of the other race, then I will call your party a non-ethno-based party. I want to see the PPP put up an Afro-Guyanese as presidential candidate to run elections. I want to see PNC put up an Indo-Guyanese to run campaigns for them as a presidential candidate. Show me that you're not a race-based party. And if you can't do that, if you can't put somebody of the other race in the highest leadership position, then I'm sorry, you are an ethno-based party, and you're appealing to your base because you want the face of an Indian person up there leading, because that's going to call Indian votes for you, and you want the party of an Afro person there because it's going to call Afro votes for you. We all know what it is.
Ms. King, we're coming to the end of the program, but we still have 5 minutes more to go. What future do you think the country holds for youths?
It's an interesting question. What future the country hold for its youths?
Given the present circumstances.
I do believe that youths will always play its role in bringing their fresh perspective and their innovative ideas to contribute to our society. I believe they will always bridge that generational gap, and I feel they're here just to wrap up on their role. They're here in the system as part of a diversification in our community as what they represent and what they stand for. Now, there could be many more opportunities given to our youths. As where we stand, I know that there are opportunities in terms of scholarship, so they are able to complete their education. They're able to experience a foreign faculty, to get a different background and a cross-cultural education from that faculty, they're able to whichever way they decide to accumulate their educational background, they're always able to make a dynamic difference in any sector they take, because they are rapidly advancing with technological advancement. They are going with the pace of technological advancement. They're able to implement those strategies into present system that we have. And I feel it's the youths, it's the youths that the country needs, actually, so to be advanced and to move from a stagnant area, to be advanced in our database system, to be advanced in the way we store our data, regardless if it's registration, regardless if it's a system in how you exit and enter a country, in everything, in everything. I feel what the youth brings to our nation is way much more impactful and something to talk about than rather the opportunity they can get here in the country. I think we need to start talking more about what opportunity the youths can take advantage of to build a future very early, to start a family very early, what benefits they are given when they complete their education, when they complete their degree, or when they complete their masters. What do they gain out of the country when they succeed, when they complete a phase that contributes to the economic growth of the country? What are they getting? I think this is the conversation that we need to actually start having. I feel there isn't enough opportunity for the youth. There isn't enough opportunity if they want to start a business with the finance that they are currently making.
Okay.
We cannot. Okay.
Mr. Jabbour, how dynamic are third parties, and what the future holds for them?
It's a very vague question. When it comes to how dynamic they are, I can only speak on Anug, obviously.
Okay, I know. Yeah. Go ahead.
Anug's, I think the first thing you need to do is look at the makeup of Anug. We have such a diverse group. We have doctors, we have lawyers, we have economists, we have accountants, we have everyone on board with us. Businessmen, teachers. It's a fantastic group. And what ANUG will be offering come 2025 will be that third option, will be an option for voters to trust an organization, as Althea said, to trust a group that will do what's best for all Guyanese, not just the people that vote for us, like the PPP and the PNC. It's somebody and a group of people that need to have some integrity. I think what we've seen happen with the past with third parties is that integrity has obviously failed the Guyanese people. The people feel betrayed by what has happened. And I think that's where this group has come into play, that, as everybody knows, I'll be very frank right now, as everybody knows right now, anybody can go and join the PVP if they were looking for money, and they can get contracts. All right? Anybody from Anug right now could claim to be that person that has left Anug and joined the PPP because the PPP are a better opportunity and what's best for Guyana. Anyone can do that. And the PPP would open their arms, just like they did with all the PNC rejects, just like they did with all the other third-party people that have sold out and joined them. The truth is, everybody has now realized that Anug is the only party that's standing independently and has the opportunity to join and get money for ourselves, but we're not doing it. None of us have done it. All of those who are part of the party right now, everyone can see has integrity and is trustworthy. All right? The power that everybody's claiming that, oh, this is all third parties want. Well, we can have it right now, just like everybody else, and join the PPP. We could get money, and we could be above the law like all of them are. But we're not doing that. So when you ask what ANU brings to the table, it's integrity and it's honesty. All right, and it's accountability for the two big parties, and that's what we have to offer.
You have 30 seconds for your closing remark. We're over time already. 30 seconds for your closing remark.
Quickly on my closing mark, I'd like to encourage everybody to start looking third party. We've seen back and forth the blame game, and we see in this country right now with all of the resources and richness that we have, and still not be where we need to be. And at some point in time, we have to start trusting other political parties to get in the middle of these two large parties to hold them accountable. All right. We need people that'll look out for all the best for Guyanese, and we encourage everybody to get on board and start to encourage third-party voting. And ANUG will be there in 2025.
Ms. King, you have 30 seconds. Well put, Mr. Jabour.
Well, I just want to thank you for the opportunity to have me here, the opportunity to share a little bit of the insight, my experience here in politics. I agree with what Jabour said, that one of the principal things that we should stand for is integrity. I solely and completely, entirely believe in integrity, honesty. I believe it's one of the pillar that we should be leading with. So just want to convince or appeal to the public out there that this is what this party has stand for. We have not gone back on that, knowing that there was previous encounters of such, but the reason why ANUG is created is because this is the time where we still need a viable third party standing with integrity and being able to hold the balance of power between the two ethnocentric voting system party. And it is very important that we have this third party. It's very important that we have the support of Guyanese who wants to hold their government and the people that they have voted for accountable for what they are promising. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we have come to the end of the program. I want to thank our listeners and all our sponsors. I want to thank Noir Singh for making this program available, Devin Bissoon and Ryan Gobin, our two technical directors. And I want to thank both of you, Mr. Jabour and Ms. King, for being our guest tonight. It has been a fabulous program. I hope a lot of people learn a lot of stuff from what you all have said. And I hope that this will give third party a chance to rise up and perhaps do what they're supposed to do in election time. But again, thanks to everyone for listening, and a pleasant good night to all of you.